All right, let's get into it. We're going to break down the real estate sales contract. But forget thinking about it as a boring pile of paperwork. Think of it more like a playbook. This is your guide to understanding all the moves, the rules, and the strategy.
So, are you thinking about buying or selling a home? Well, whether you're about to make the biggest purchase of your life or you're selling a huge asset, it all boils down to one single pivotal moment, the offer. And this isn't just about the price. It's the opening move that kicks the entire game into motion.
And that is exactly how you should be thinking about it, like a strategic game. You've got players, you've got rules, and trust me, every single move you make has a consequence. If you can understand this framework, you're on the right track to navigating the whole process successfully. So, let's talk about that crucial first move. It all kicks off the second a buyer decides, okay, I'm ready to put something on the table. First things first, let's get the terminology right so we all know who's who on the playing field. The person making the offer, that's the offerer, and the one receiving it, typically the seller, is the offeree. Simple, right? Knowing your role is step one. Now, you can't just casually mention a price and call it a legal offer. Nope. For an offer to actually be valid, it has to hit three key criteria. 1, it has to be communicated directly to a specific person. 2, it has to be a serious, legitimate offer, no joking around. And 3, it can't be vague. The terms have to be crystal clear and specific.
And here's a little insider rule that might surprise you. A real estate agent has a legal and ethical duty to present every single offer they receive. You heard that right. Unless the seller has put it in writing that they don't want to see certain types of offers, their agent has to show them everything. It doesn't matter how low or, ridiculous it seems, the agent doesn't get to be the filter.
Okay, so an offer is on the table. What happens next? Well, the ball is officially in the seller's court, and this is where the real negotiation dance begins. The seller, the offeree, now has 4 potential moves they can make. They could, 1, do absolutely nothing and just let the offer expire. Or, 2, they could reject it flat out. If the offer is a dream come true, they could, 3, accept it as is. But let's be honest, most of the time they're going to go with option 4, the counteroffer. And this right here is probably the most important thing to remember about this whole dance. A counteroffer is a rejection. I'll say that again. A counteroffer kills the original offer. The moment a seller counters, the buyer's first offer is legally terminated. It's gone. Poos. The seller can't come back a day later and say, you know what, I'll take that first offer. That ship has sailed. The counter is a brand new offer, and now the roles have completely flipped. So, you've gone back and forth maybe a few times, and finally, you have a verbal agreement. Everyone's happy. But in the world of real estate, a handshake deal isn't worth the paper it's not written on. This is one of the absolute, unbendable rules of the game. For a real estate deal to be legally binding, to be enforceable in court, it must be in writing and signed by everyone involved. This is not a suggestion, it's a hard and fast legal requirement. And this rule actually has a name. It's called the Statute of Frauds. Its entire reason for existing is to prevent, well, fraud. To stop misunderstandings and false claims about who promised what. For a transaction this big, it makes sure everything is documented, clear, and signed on the dotted line. All right, let's shift gears and talk about one of the most critical, yet often overlooked, parts of that written contract, describing exactly what property is being sold. And this is another thing that surprises a lot of people. Your everyday mailing address, 123 Main Street, is not good enough for a legal contract. For that contract to hold up, it needs a precise, unambiguous legal description of the property's boundaries. So, to get that legal precision, contracts will use one of 3 main methods. And the one you'll see really just depends on the property's history and where it's located. Is it a huge farm out in the country or a house in a modern suburb? That's what determines the method. First up is Mets and Bounds. This is the oldest method around. The best way to think of it is like a surveyor giving you turn-by-turn directions around the property line. It starts at a fixed point, maybe an old oak tree or an iron pin, and then describes every single angle and distance until it makes a full circle, ending up right back where it started. Next, we have the one you're most likely to see for homes and subdivisions, lot and block. This one is way simpler. It basically just points to your specific piece of land, say Lot 5, Block B, on a super detailed map of the entire neighborhood. That map is called a plat, and it's officially on file with the government. And finally, there's the government survey system. For this one, I want you to imagine a giant grid, like a chessboard, laid out over huge portions of the country.
This system describes a property by pinpointing its location within a specific square on that grid, using terms like townships and sections. You'll usually only see this for describing really large, often rural pieces of land.
Okay, the property is defined, the price is set. Now let's get to the end game, the other key terms in the contract, and, more importantly, what happens if someone decides not to play by the rules.
So inside every contract, you're going to find these key ingredients. Of course, you've got the sales price, but you'll also see the earnest money. That's the buyer's good faith deposit. There's a firm closing date, which is the finish line, a rule for possession that spells out the exact moment you get the keys, and, this one's super important, a casualty loss clause. It defines who's on the hook if the house, say, burns down before the sale is final.
And that brings us to the big question. A contract is a promise, right? But what are the actual consequences if someone breaks that promise? In legal terms, this is called a default, or a breach of contract.
This table lays out the options for the party who got wronged. So, if the buyer backs out, the seller can sometimes sue to force the sale. That's specific performance. Or they could sue for the money they lost, or most commonly, they just keep the earnest money deposit. Now, if the seller is the one who defaults, the buyer has similar options. They can sue to force the seller to sell the house, sue for financial damages, or just get their earnest money back and walk away.
So, at the end of the day, remember this. A sales contract is so much more than just a piece of paper. It's the final score of the game you just played. It's a reflection of every move, every negotiation, every decision that was made. Understanding it isn't just smart, it's absolutely essential to winning the game.